Welcome to Apprentice.io's Industry Insights, where we'll be having a multi-part interview with Apprentice.io's co-founder and CEO, Angelo Stracquatanio, in our Jersey City offices on the 38th floor, which normally has a beautiful view of Manhattan as a backdrop, but it was so foggy during the filming you couldn't see out the window. This is the 10-year anniversary for Apprentice as a company, and we get into a wide range of topics throughout the interview, which was around 2 hours in length. We'll be cutting the interview into a couple of episodes and releasing them in series. So please enjoy part one of the interview. Hello, welcome to Apprentice.io's Industry Insights. I'm your host, Frank Maggiore, and today we're going to be talking with Apprentice's co-founder and CEO, Angelo Stracquatanio, where we'll discuss Apprentice's 10-year journey from startup to industry leader and bringing molecules to medicine with their best-in-class Tempo Manufacturing Cloud MES platform. Angelo, welcome to the program.
I'm very excited to be on, Frank. It's been quite the journey together all these years.
How does it feel to be voted Pharma MES's sexiest CEO for the second year in a row?
Oh, I think I just learned that that's a new award. I'll take it. But
All right, please talk about the significance of the 10-year anniversary of Apprentice.io.
yeah, we're here in our office that we've been in now for almost 5 years. And we have the whole team together at our company-wide on-site, celebrating not only 2024, but our 10-year anniversary. And this whole week and weekend has made a lot of memories come back. It's been quite nostalgic. But also, I think it's an extraordinary accomplishment of what we've done. When I look back on these 10 years, to even make it to 10 years to begin with is
Most startups don't even come close. I mean, there is a graveyard littered with scores of startups who would kill to be in the place that we are currently in.
Yeah, just even duration, just to make it to 10, I
Mhm.
think is a huge deal. I think that in of itself is an accomplishment. But beyond all of that, we showed the team a look back every year from not only 2014 when the business was officially started, but when the first idea or rough concept of an idea was formed in 2013. So you're looking at a 10, 11-year journey from initial idea to having the gumption to go after it, to then building not just the first version, but the first three, to then bringing it to market, working with the first group of customers, then raising capital, hiring the team, scaling through COVID, building even more of the product, scaling it again, and it's just been quite a journey. But I think when I look back, the thing I'm most proud of is twofold. One is a lot of the trust and credibility we built over a decade of extraordinarily hard work, because our customers are using this now for really their most important assets. And this isn't something like we built some software that's being used as a toy over in the corner. The most critical manufacturing of the most critical drugs is being produced at scale on Apprentice, and yeah, I'd say that combined with everything else and the growth that we've had is absolutely a pretty extraordinary milestone, because the team, while I may have jump started it 10 years ago, it's the team that got us here, and that part of it is just, yeah, it's pretty extraordinary.
Pretty amazing. So let's go back to the origin. Let's start off way from the beginning. Your wife, Alex, had all sorts of problems and issues and pain points that she discovered from the start. Walk us through some of that. And then also, what is the significance of the company name of Apprentice?
Yeah, so 10 years ago, before the company got started, I think I was a naive software engineering husband doing anything a new husband would do, is hopefully being a good listener to his partner, but more importantly, thinking through how these challenges that I heard that were not unique to her. And so just some context for the listeners. So my co-founder and also significant other comes from life sciences and life science manufacturing in particular, with over at that time over a decade's worth of experience in biopharma manufacturing. And a lot of the key challenges producing a wildly complex at the time cancer therapeutic, not with an electronic system, and using paper batch record, which for what it's worth is incredibly pervasive throughout the industry, not just then, but still now. We estimate somewhere north of 70 to 80% of this industry is still manufacturing on 200-page paper binders. And so, all those years ago, being the naive software engineering new husband that I was, I might have been even fiance, not even
Husband
husband.
at the time. Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna get in trouble here for which date we're talking about. Anyway, moving on.
Yes.
I just remember having these really deep and thoughtful conversations with her about how, technology, new technology and software could potentially really change not only her quality of life, but have an impact across the entire space. Because, for the folks that aren't as familiar with life science manufacturing, because interestingly, it's a pretty opaque industry. It's not something that, you can go on and watch a million YouTube videos about, you don't see it a lot on X or things like this. It's not common knowledge how therapeutics, and when I say therapeutics, I mean both, when most people think of drugs, they think of like things like pills, which
Mhm.
are classified as small molecule drugs. That manufacturing process is wildly different than, say, a biologic, which the best way to think about this is you may think of pills and they are, mixed together to make the pill, in a very simplistic way, of course. Biologics are grown, and they're grown over time from living cells. And Frank, there's no one better who's taught me about this, that biology is messy.
Biology is
and
definitely
and
messy.
and manufacturing a biologic is extraordinarily complex. And both the process that goes into it, the time scale, and the level of talent that is required in order to be successful is extreme.
Right.
And
For me, I always love the analogy of building a small molecule in manufacturing is like building a
yeah,
bicycle. It takes a couple of, it takes a little bit of time. It's only a couple of pieces. But building a large molecule biologic is like building a private jet. It's millions of parts, and you can't do it alone. You
hmm
need a team, and in order to coordinate that team,
hmm
you need a software platform that's going to be able to do it for you.
and that's really what kind of rung in my head. 10 years ago, again, being naive and believing that we can have an impact, which we ended up having. But, at the time when you're just, it's a vision and a dream and you're writing code on a 5-year-old MacBook Pro, it's you can look at that and say like, man, how did you have the confidence or any of it to go after it? But we did. We knew eventually it would work. And so, when you kind of go through all of that, build the first version, you have no idea how the market's going to react to it. And then, fast forward really only 4 or 5 months later when we launched at Interphex, which is a really big pharma trade show in Manhattan, where we won Best New Product. And it's kind of wild because here at our onsite this week, we saw the award submission of the first thing we wrote. And 10 years later, the same market themes, the same pain points are all still there. The only difference is that 10 years later now, our software is actually being used to solve those challenges, to now not only focus on pills and biologics, but there's been such a rise of personalized medicine through cell and gene therapy, where we're now producing half of the commercially approved gene therapies in the world, which is just absolutely mind blowing to go from this like crazy idea and concept that is a naive fiance. I think I'm doing the math now. Totally fiance, not husband. Naive fiance all those years ago to where we are today.
Yeah, fantastic. And then just to go back to that a little, some of her pain points were the 3 a.m. phone calls of needing to come down into the office, drive an hour from home, get there, find out it's a stupid issue that could have been solved remotely, and then have to decide, do I just stay at the office all day or do I drive back home another hour? And then it's basically 5, 6 o'clock, and then I got to come back into the office anyway. And do I just spend the rest of the day there? So I mean, it's this dynamic of, oh my God, this is a real quality of life pain point that could be fixed by a software platform, by an intelligence system.
You know what's interesting? Those pains, looking back, while very acute for someone I cared about and for our own quality of life, they were the tip of the iceberg for the pain points that we discovered over time. Because that's, we designed a system to be very human centric. But sorry, you asked me where the name Apprentice come from. It's interesting because when we were talking about those pain points a moment ago, they were all human centric. And at the time, it was pretty obvious, and still is 10 years later, that, in order for the human to create an outcome that neither the human nor machine alone could do, I always had this idea and this vision that interestingly came from my dad, because my dad was an electrician, and he always talked about these apprentices who could help him do the things that he couldn't do alone. They always helped him become a better electrician. They always supported him on a task. And of course, the apprentice constantly learned and constantly improved and constantly provided value. And so when I thought about how could a system not replace humans, but augment humans, the name Apprentice was perfect, because effectively it became a digital apprentice that helped the human achieve his or her goals. And so now, 10 years later, the name Apprentice has taken on a different connotation, is much, much, much more intelligent now. I knew one day there'd be truly intelligent software, because even 10 years ago, the talk of AI was there.
Right.
The capabilities was a little bit different than it is today. Did we know it was going to be, truly a kind of conversational interface backed by LLM? Not really. But, even before I started Apprentice, I was taking a number of machine learning courses. AI was, the concept was prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't have necessarily capability set that we now associate with AI. And so, this name Apprentice, 10 years, it's as poignant as it was 10 years ago that it is today. And so it's just really cool, because, coming back to those pain points that she had, those are human level pain points that now, 10 years later, we're having the opportunity to go after so many higher order and complex challenges that bridge beyond the human. But we've never lost sight of the fact that the human is at the core of the system, that this is a human-centric piece of software, even if it is now doing things that we thought were just a pipe dream 10 years ago.
No, very good. How did you meet your co-founder? What's the story of bringing Gary Pinata on board?
So I'm a software engineer.
Yeah.
And as a software engineer, I didn't know how to sell anything. I didn't know how to sell. I didn't know the process around selling. I didn't know, how you take a piece of software and ultimately convince someone to give you money for it. That at the time, that was such a foreign concept to me. 10 years later now, it's obviously very different. But like at the time, I had no clue how I was going to take this thing that was, starting to become pretty unique, and we were starting to get very positive feedback. Like I mentioned, how are we going to take this thing and ultimately convince a market who is really built on trust and credibility? How are we going to get them to trust us to use this software to run the manufacturing? And so Gary was by far the most experienced sales leader that I knew. And even here at the 10-year anniversary, we found the picture that I brought when I brought Google Glass to his house for the first time, showing him and explaining this concept, and was like, hey, I need some help. Are you interested in like joining forces here to take this seemingly crazy idea and bring it to market? And so, 10 years later now, he's still leading our sales team. I have learned an extraordinary amount about not just how to sell, but the process around it, the team, the go-to-market system. Like, there's so much more to selling than just when people may think around just kind of, hey, I have this thing, look at these cool features, and please give me money. That is not selling. Sales is actually very sophisticated, is wildly complex. And, selling into this industry when you're trying to garner trust as well is just another layer that, over 10 years, we've, spent a lot of time building and refining.
Right.
I'm Angelo with Apprentice, here in New York City at Interphex, the largest pharma manufacturing show in the world, where we won Best New Product.
So now you win the Interphex Best New Product 2015, and now all of a sudden you have a new wind at your back as a company. And talk a little bit about that. That story is epic because effectively you charged it all to your credit card, put a booth together, let's get some things printed up, present the product, and then to win that category in a field of pretty, big players, and that must have been a major rush, and especially bringing to the forefront that these are real needs to meet real challenges within the industry.
I had no idea what was involved with a trade show. And worse, I had no idea the cost associated with not just a trade show, but the largest trade show in our space.
Yes.
Because the companies that attend Interphex are multi-billion dollar market cap companies, public companies, organizations that have been around, some of them up to 100 years now,
Mhm.
that are, developing everything from equipment to analytical tools to software. I mean, these are the who's who of life sciences. And to show up to this trade show with what I charged to my credit card that cost $16,000, which is still a lot of money 10 years later.
Yes. But 10
Probably
years
even
ago,
more
right.
expensive now. But
Yes.
$16,000 to the credit card, and that was only for the booth.
Yes.
That did not include all the stuff in the booth. And so, to say we were, or I was intimidated is an understatement of the world, because again, I had no concept of what this was going into the Javits Center. And the Javits Center, you've been to a million times, it's huge. This is a massive, massive event space. And so, when we signed up for it, I did not appreciate the scale of the show. And so, showing up with my little booth in the back corner with my Vista print banners that we printed out and had them shipped overnight, and to walk on the show floor and see these mega cap companies sitting next to us was pretty intimidating. And so, the first day, I'll never forget, I was standing near the stage where they're announcing, these awards, and I was eating yogurt. I was trying to get energized before, the whole day kicks off. And when they announced that we won, it was a bit shocking, right? Because what that told me was that there was clearly a need and an opportunity for what we were thinking about. And then after the show, the panic set in that, oh, wait a second, it's not just wind at our sails, because we had pipeline, we had, a lot of customer demos, there was a lot of enthusiasm and excitement,
Mm-hmm.
but we had to deliver. And that meant I had to not only productize this software, but I had to up-level the quality, I had to up-level the capability, and I then had to figure out, then how do you deploy this software into these regulated environments? And to do so, by the way, not just in the United States, but some of our first customers were international. So not only was I putting it on the credit card for the trade show, but out came back the credit card when we were flying to Korea and Brazil and Europe and all these places that, admittedly, I hadn't even traveled to myself previously. And so to be at that moment where, it's like very exciting, but then it's oh crap, we have to deliver now.
Actually have to build this. Yes.
Wait a second, this isn't just a idea contest. Like, ooh, you won an idea contest, congratulations. But products are not ideas. Customer relationships are not just like vision. You have to deliver, and that's where it began, the journey of not just the first version, but we're now celebrating our 7th major version of our software 10 years later. So we never stopped. We never stopped building, innovating, up-leveling, and then ultimately refining this deployment and kind of scaling process within a wildly complex industry.
Right. And what was that like initially to try to sell cloud-based MES platform to the pharma industry, who is either completely wed to paper and still many customers refuse to get off of it, or the rest are, no, we need to have it on-prem because everything needs to be behind our walls. This is the most critical, most important information. This is the Coca-Cola secret recipe times, a couple of thousand, because of how critical it is to the global healthcare infrastructure, and that we need to keep those secrets behind our walls, to then moving towards okay, now we need this as our cloud-based MES solution that lives in the cloud, and here are all the benefits that come with it in terms of feature sets, in terms of flexibility, and all of that. How is that like to sell it to those, pretty conservative pharma customers at the time?
And we want them to be conservative. These are drugs that are going into our bodies, our families' bodies, our kids' bodies, and we as consumers of their products want them to be conservative. We want them to be strict. We want them to have an extremely high bar for anything that comes anywhere near a manufacturing process that is going to develop a product that's going to go into a human being. And so, as consumers, we want that. As a vendor, it's really hard, extraordinarily hard, because when you break down the sales process is, similar to other large scale software. This is not, $50 a month software. This isn't $2,000 a month software. It's very, especially at the high end, it's very complex, very expensive software, relatively speaking, relative to other SaaS startups, not relative to everything else in this space. But the point is, you can look at the process and be like, well, it feels familiar. It's like you have your pipeline development, you identify and qualify out your opportunities, you move into POC scoping, and then ultimately like a POC, coming out of the POC to deployment scoping, and then you get into paper, which paper is, negotiating MSA, order form, et cetera. So like you can look at them and be like, hey, that feels pretty standard, pretty familiar for enterprise sales. But the next layer after all of that is really the extraordinary complexity of this space. Because you're not just demoing a product and getting people comfortable with a product. You have to build a foundation of trust and credibility before you can even walk in the door. I call it like the pre-approved mortgage. Like you can't even get to the table unless you have proven elsewhere, which by the way becomes an extraordinary chicken or the egg problem. You need to prove somewhere else that you were successful and you have enough trust and credibility for me to even be worth my time to talk to. Then on top of that, we have a whole entire regulatory burden and framework. I wouldn't call it a burden, a regulatory framework where then you must prove that you can conform, in our case, to what's called GMP, Good Manufacturing Practices standards. On top of that, you also have additional regulation around 21 CFR Part 11, which is electronic signature management. And then on top of that, you were asking about cloud. At the time, cloud was just really getting started. And cloud, you have all these other challenges because there's not just the security requirements and certifications around SOC 2, Type 2, and ISO 27001, et cetera.
CFR 21, Part 11 compliance.
All connected to infrastructure, not software. That is infrastructure that you're managing. You're not just managing software. And so when you add in then, your base sales process, plus the quality process, plus trust and credibility, and then on top of that, they need to see and understand all of your documentation. They need to see and understand how their team will be successful with this. And then even after all of the education that goes into all of it, which a huge amount of our initial process, which was and still is education, they still need to prove it to them that this works, hence the POCs. And so it's not always super common that other organizations of enterprise scale do proof of concepts. But again, when you are running their most important assets in manufacturing, and the key about manufacturing, this is the other really interesting thing you brought up. You've defined the word as like complex manufacturing and biologics. Because it's such an opaque industry, people may not have a mental model for what manufacturing in this world looks like. And it is not a Tesla manufacturing facility. There are not a bunch of robots, using a gigapress to stamp out a door, which then gets assembled onto a Model 3. That is not our world. Our world, like we talked about, is biology, it's life, it's cells, and those cells multiply over time. And the T time component is a huge factor because if anything happens along the way, you're not just losing a potentially multi-million-dollar batch of drugs, which obviously has a financial impact, but you unequivocally are then having a time impact to then get that drug out to market for the patients that need it. And I think we've all now at this point read the number of articles, and we all lived through COVID to know that supply is extraordinarily critical and important. And so when you have a manufacturing process that's as complex as that, and you have to sell into that, and it's now cloud for the first time, and you're getting over trust and credibility, and you're getting over the product, and you're getting over regulatory, and you're getting over, just the period of time it takes, and getting over the POCs in order to prove that it's actually successful. Yeah, when you layer that all in, it's really hard. However, once you do figure it out, like any other sales process, it's a process. There's qualifications and activities you follow. There's timing and gates. There's conversion rates. There's quota and capacity. And, over time, you get good at kind of managing this. And so, do I wish it took so long to figure out how to be successful at that? Yeah, I wish obviously I would have liked that to be shorter. But the reality is that I think we now understand why our customers put us through that in the first place. Because at the end of the day, like I started the answer to this question, we want them to. We as consumers want them to be stringent. We want them to be tough because we and our families and our friends are recipients of what they manufacture, and we want it to be safe. And so, yeah, it's tough being a vendor, but I'm really glad that this industry is as tough as they are.
Do you see that we are competing against the other legacy providers, or are all of the software MES companies competing against paper still after all this time? And now that AI is becoming injected in, is that going to be kind of the next layer that comes after this, where, okay, now that you have a cloud-based MES solution or a software MES solution in place, now how accepting are you going to be of AI, the principles of AI, and being able to leverage that for the fullest effect for optimization within a company?
So touching on AI for a minute, because obviously, um, AI and its application within our world has to be very thoughtful and controlled, because we don't want the AI making a recommendation or hallucination to a human that ultimately would make a incorrect decision, because any incorrect decision can lead to some really bad outcomes. Whether that outcome is just losing a batch or whether the outcome is quality of the batch. I mean, they're all bad.
Right. So AI in non-GMP parts of the process.
And not just for non-GMP though. I do think there are opportunities for it to be used in GMP settings for non-GMP decisions yet. And this is where, 10 years worth of learning, and to succinctly answer your question, like, who do we think we're competing with? How do we see this technology evolving, especially with AI? I set up the whole AI piece of this because I do believe we have figured out how to apply this new technology, because over the last 10 years, we've had to figure out how to apply many emerging technologies. Cloud was the first one. How do you even do a manufacturing system in the cloud for life science manufacturing? Emerging problem one. Then if you kind of look over our shoulders here, a component of our application can be used on head-worn devices and leverage augmented reality. Emerging tech two. We also then have a component of the system that's running on mobile devices. How do you deploy and manage mobile devices in these facilities for manufacturing? Emerging tech trend three. Another big component of what we had to solve for was what we call no-code recipes, where every other system before us was you had to write literal code in order to design and create a manufacturing recipe. So how do you then create this whole thing, which no code, by the way, seems pervasive now? 5, even 10 years ago, wasn't really a standard concept to have these no code out of the box applications. And so we've had to figure out so many different emerging trends, and I'm sure I'm forgetting 6 others that are in this list too. But that's why when we now approach AI, we're approaching AI through those learnings. But this is where, come back to your question again, who are we ultimately competing with? Is it paper? Is it legacy systems? Is it other modern systems? Who is it? What is it? And, this question is really fascinating, because while 70 to 80% of this industry, and I mean global, the United States is a little bit different than other global emerging markets and things like this. And that's intuitive to anybody that kind of understands this. A huge portion of the industry is still paper. Why? Why is it still so much on paper? Part of it was that the difficulty that was previously associated with manufacturing systems was very high. And so automatically you just kind of generally assume, all right, well, if I'm going to embark on deploying a piece of manufacturing software, it's going to take a really long time. And that time comes with cost and resources. And so organizations were like, oof, the total cost of ownership here, the time component, the just sheer willpower that's required.
How many FTEs am I going to have to throw at this to get this done? And
brutal.
These were brutal setups before,
yeah.
But AI and other systems have made it significantly easier as they have.
And that's the piece of it, right? Because for paper, how do you get people off of paper? You get people off of paper by having a system that, even without AI, is capable enough to reduce the resourcing burden, the cost burden, and the time burden. And we've proven that now at scale. Some analogies here is some of the legacy systems, we've heard estimates north into the $150 million in services to deploy some of these existing manufacturing legacy systems. That combined with the software itself, obviously, is costly, combined with the resources and time, which we've heard some stories going up to 5+ years for some facilities to just get digital. So if you're thinking about, man, I know I really need to digitize, there's so much value in this, there's so much quality that can be derived from it, so much, just modern practices, retention from employees, upskilling, training, there's so many value components that can go into it. But if it's going to take me 5 years, tens of millions of dollars to deploy and all these resources, well, yeah, there's an extraordinary barrier to entry. And so we had to solve for first, how do you lower all those costs? How do you compress the time down to 90 days for initial, what we call first site land? It's the first site that you deploy at in your facility. And how can you digitize a manufacturing process and go live and validate in 90 days? It's a wildly complex and hard challenge, but we broke down the problem. We innovated through quality. We innovated through validation. We innovated through software. We innovated through, support and training and everything associated with it. And so, yes, from a math perspective, paper is still our biggest competitor, but I do think we've made some really serious strides in beating paper. So now if we feel confident that we are competing effectively with paper, well, then you have kind of these other categories of software, legacy systems, other kind of more modern systems. And so then it comes down to, well, then how will those systems evolve over time and what will they look like? And I think it's becoming increasingly obvious that these systems will not look like the deterministic software of old, where, think of it as simple human-based input, output. I enter some data, I follow workflow, and I get some reporting or some data out, generally speaking. I know I'm trivializing way too much, but that now is shifting to intelligent software, where the AI has context and the AI can sit alongside the human to make proactive recommendations, not reactive. And it's no longer just input output, it's input output synthesis recommendation and a continual feedback loop where you're then driving to an outcome that just was not possible with existing software. And so, I think we are competing well against paper, even though paper is really good at a lot of things. The legacy systems and modern systems even have had a hard time bridging to what we call next-gen MES, where a lot of the new capabilities for cell and gene therapy, high-speed new product introduction, platform consolidation, connected manufacturing network, all of these kind of new next-gen components, where I don't even think they've fully bridged to that. And then now we're talking about this new world, which is intelligent, AI-driven, but not just AI-driven. I can't say too much about what we're building right now. We'll announce it in 2025, but goes even beyond what most people think AI is even capable of today.
In an industry where precision and compliance are paramount, Apprentice's Tempo platform offers a cutting-edge manufacturing execution system solution. It's cloud-based, mobile-first, operator-centric, with the most intuitive UI in the industry, making it perfect for today's dynamic pharmaceutical manufacturing environments and for the production of the world's most complex drug products. Whether you're working on groundbreaking cell and gene therapies, biologics, or small molecules, Tempo provides a fully validated MES system that's both powerful and easy to use. It streamlines your processes, ensures compliance, and adapts to your specific manufacturing needs. So get off of paper batch records and discover how Apprentice's Tempo Manufacturing Cloud can transform your operations by visiting us at apprentice.io. Attention industry professionals, revolutionize your manufacturing process with the Apprentice Tempo Manufacturing Cloud, a manufacturing execution system built to streamline your operations, boost efficiency, and ensure compliance all in one powerful platform. Experience the future of manufacturing with our free 30-day trial. Scan the QR code on your screen now to unlock a world of innovation. Don't just keep pace, set the tempo as an industry leader with Apprentice. That's all for Apprentice.io's Industry Insights. I'm Frank Maggiore. We'll pick up the next parts of this interview with Apprentice.io CEO Angelo Stracquatanio in future episodes. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for notifications when new episodes drop. Please comment on if you have any additional topics you would like for me to cover in this space. We'll be taking a short break, so enjoy your holidays, and we'll see you early next year, 2025, for more Industry Insights.